What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to talk about the overall market, some major things that are coming out for this week as earnings week is kicking off and we have some major earnings coming out. I'm also going to break down some big headlines coming out about Elon Musk and Tesla, what I do anticipate to happen to the markets, and why on earth you should be very cautious in my opinion. Now, before I break anything down and give you guys my Tesla price prediction for tomorrow, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $3,000. And the best part is, any could be a free Tesla share. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 1 day, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. The SPY was up about 0.39% for the day on Friday, and we did actually see the market show some very nice momentum. We do still have some bullish momentum on the MACD as of right now, but I can't really make any major predictions just yet, because you have to remember we have a very big day tomorrow, and maybe for the next 2 weeks almost every day is going to be pretty big because we have earnings kicking off. And I just want to remind everyone that tomorrow we have some more earnings coming out. Many big ones are going to be coming out before the market opens, some of them after the market opens. And during this time we have Goldman Sachs that they're actually going to be releasing their earnings as well, not to mention Morgan Stanley. I think many of them are going to be coming out during the aftermarket, so I don't expect them to affect us way too much in the very beginning. But I do believe that how we start moving, starting from I would say like Wednesday and beyond, and some of the earnings coming out for today could definitely affect the sentiment in this market. Now, one thing I don't like about the market, if I'm going to be honest with everyone, is where we are kicking into this earnings. One thing that tends to happen, especially if we pump too hard approaching like a CPI report, is the market tended to get opposite reactions. Not always, but that was something that happens. Or it's kind of like when a stock starts pumping very hard before earnings. That does not always guarantee we're going to pump right after. And typically you'll get kind of like an opposite reaction. And I'm just trying to say this because right now the market is very greedy. People are putting their hands up. They're becoming very excited. You could see for the past month, we've been greedy, neutral, greedy. People are just so greedy. They think the market's going to push up. The majority of investors are becoming more comfortable. Now, do I think that this is the best of time to be really greedy? I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I can't guarantee that you're going to be wrong if you do have that sentiment, because the reason I'm so cautious is because of what the technical indicators are saying, and also the VIX being at such a low value. I'm going to talk about that in just a couple of minutes. But like I said, earnings are going to kick off and they are going to affect how the market moves. We can't predict them perfectly. And I really believe, in my opinion, earnings are most likely not going to be that strong. I think they're going to be very mixed, very flat, and some are going to be some pretty big misses that could actually bring SPY in the market down, and also Tesla. I will talk about Tesla in a little bit more detail, but I just want to note that the VIX right now, or at least the last time it closed on the American markets, it was at 18.35. And we did actually see this spike a bit today in different markets. So I'm still very cautious when it comes to the levels it's at. Because if this thing does start spiking, that's not going to be the best of signs for the stock market. I also want to note something else that's very important, and that's the fact that for Tesla, we have some bad news that came out. It's not necessarily the worst of news, but Elon Musk is going to be poised for trial over some 2018 tweets that came out proposing to make the car maker private. I'm sure you guys remember when that happened and all the scrutiny that Elon Musk got. The trial is still going on, or at least he has to go to trial again over this. And I know that there could be many biases involved in him having to do that. Don't want to get into any more details like that. The bottom line is, if you are a Tesla investor or an employee or whatever, it's important to note that if your CEO is going on trial, that's not the best of things for the company. So that's the reason why we have to be very careful. I know news like this tends to twist things, and there could be the news right now that's like coming out about Tesla, it's particularly really, really negative. They're trying very hard to attack this company, bring it down, and it really is what it is, right? This could affect the share price once again. Now, I know there's still a lot of talk right now about the price cuts for Tesla and this and that. I mentioned this in a lot more detail in my previous videos. I just want to note that the cuts have been happening between 9 to 20% for all of their models. Actually, it's 6 to 20%, but this is happening and they're getting lots of scrutiny for this. But I believe that they've done the right thing, especially a big drop over such a short period of time. It really incentivizes more people to start buying and buying and buying to offset the lower demand that this company has been seeing. They did this in China, now they're doing this in Europe and the United States. They have to do what's necessary for the company. I do not consider this a bad move, but this does tell me that future earnings may not be as great as some people are, or they may expect them to be, because there's clearly a change in this economy. The effects of the rate hikes are starting to show, and I believe we're going to see the real effects of them later on. It's still going to take time. The reactions tend to be relatively slow. So, with all of that said, how we open tomorrow may depend on some earnings, may depend on other pieces of data. But from a technical standpoint, technically we are still in this uptrend. It's not necessarily over. And I do believe the next major level on SPY is going to be a fight at this trend line, descending, broadening wedge resistance. Now, could we break past this? It is very possible. We could try to fight for it if lots of buyers come in. But there's also the possibility, and this is what I mentioned in my previous videos, that this could be a giant bull trap. To convince me that this is not a bull trap and we're going to keep flying up, you have to break and hold 410. Break and hold it in a very strong manner, then this thing might actually start flying. And that is a possibility. But like I said before, I think it's very unlikely. And I've said that because of the fact that earnings are coming out, they're likely not going to be as great. I do believe that the first few earnings may be kind of decent or actually pretty good, because the first banks that had their earnings, I believe we had JP Morgan Chase and other ones, they all ended up beating on earnings per share, and only one of them actually missed. I think I had their charts here, but only one of them missed on revenue. So the majority of banks are doing pretty well so far, but there's no guarantee this is going to continue for lots of tech stocks. We also have Netflix having earnings on the 19th. Tesla has earnings on the 25th. That's going to be very important. My expectations are personally not super high. I'm still going to be very cautious. I'm actually not going to even like play Tesla into this. I'm just going to wait and see what the company shows us. So, with all of that said, what do I think is happening on the charts? Now, why am I still cautious? Why am I so cautious? My answer to that is the levels we're seeing on the VIX. The VIX came down really, really hard in such a short period of time. If you actually look at it, this thing dropped insanely hard. We actually had like a 10% red day or something like that not too long ago. Not the best of signs to be buying shares in companies or buying stock, in my opinion. Not financial advice, by the way. But I'm saying this because when you see this big drop in the volatility index and it's at such a low value, you ask yourself, is this thing about to get a big reaction to the opposite direction? In my opinion, I believe this thing would get a reaction slowly. It would make a nice move to the upside. I just don't know the exact day it's going to happen, and it could happen soon. So that's why I'm still warning everyone to be very careful, because I think it was on the MACD. On the MACD, you're seeing this major divergence. Look at how this momentum looked right here compared to right here. I think the RSI shows the same thing. I believe it does. Yep. So on the RSI, another clear divergence that is also forming, right? Once again, a very, very critical thing. This basically tells us that we could see a big reversal on the VIX, which means the stock market could make a big move to the downside, right? Over the next few weeks, over the next week or so, it could happen very soon. I'd be very careful. And then also on the QQQ, what's good about it is it looks pretty strong. We could actually fill the gap here. And to me, the NASDAQ looks like it has more room. That's the very interesting thing, because the VIX drops so hard, and that's why I'm so cautious. But from a technical standpoint, the NASDAQ looks like it has a little bit more room to push. And I believe that it's a little bit more likely we might get a small push from the NASDAQ. Maybe Apple pushes up a little bit more before we do start to see it stagnate. And here's one of the reasons why. Why could the QQQ push up a little more? The answer is it might get dragged up by Apple. right? Could we fill this gap? I don't know if that's going to happen that soon. Maybe we try to do it, maybe we fill it, but then we could see a big reversal to the opposite direction pretty fast. Why might Apple pump a little bit, and why might Apple slow down? Well, on Apple, I just want to note that we have this very big supply zone right up here. We are very close to entering it. If we do enter it, I'm going to be watching 136.8 on this thing, because we could see a rejection off there. We got a big rejection right off there before. Could happen again, right? So be very, very careful depending on, the news and earnings and etc. But if it keeps going, then that could actually pump the markets. Once again, it's very hard to tell depending on earnings and based off where the VIX is. On SPY, I believe we're going to fight for the descending broadening wedge. We're going to try to get to 400. And in my opinion, I don't know if we're going to break this tomorrow. It really depends on so many factors, but it's very possible. But what's going to happen is we're going to try to establish a lower high. So 402 to 406 has been my target. I did adjust it a little bit. I could see it coming up to this level and maybe getting a big rejection to the downside. If this thing truly needs to explode to the upside, we have to break and hold 410. I just mentioned that. That's a very important level to watch. Now, what does all this have to do with Tesla? What the heck am I seeing for Tesla? The answer is, on Tesla, we've been respecting. I was just drawing out a hypothetical situation. I will actually talk about that in just a few minutes. But we've been respecting this nice uptrend. This is kind of like a rising wedge. But what I want to note about it is one thing that's not that great is the fact that we've been shopping back and forth and back and forth. And at the same time, the SPY, the NASDAQ, these things have been pumping. So these things are pushing up, and Tesla's just been going back and forth and back and forth, not the best of signs. That's why the price price ratio is still at this relatively low value, because Tesla is underperforming. It still is technically. And I do believe there's a possibility that this could change and maybe Tesla starts to outperform it going into earnings, because Tesla's earnings is once again going to be on the 25th of January, just 9 days away. But the problem is, right now, I'm not seeing it in the charts. I'm not seeing lots of strength as of right now. It's been underperforming. And that's particularly because of all the bad news the stock has been seeing. So what I think Tesla could do is, right now we're still stuck in this channel. We're just going back and forth and back and forth. It's pretty boring actually in a way. What I think is we're going to basically repeat this cycle unless we get a break in one of the directions. And it's going to depend heavily on the news and how the market performs. I believe Tesla's going to try to go for this gap fill up here to this 1, 2, 3 area. And then another zone to watch would be this trend line. See this trend line right here on the bottom? I want to see if Tesla could hold this. I want Tesla to hold it for there to be hope of a more bullish outlook. If Tesla comes down and breaks below this trend line, so if we hypothetically, if Tesla's like this, let's just say we get a push up to fill this gap, then we start coming down. If Tesla breaks below this trend line, okay, not going to be a good sign. Because if we break this, then we have potential to come all the way back down to this like 115, 116 area. And if that doesn't hold us, because we've bounced off here historically, but if that doesn't hold us, then there's also the gap way down here to this 113 that could get filled. I would watch that very carefully. Now, even though on the bigger time frame, we have this like left shoulder, the head right here, and then like a right shoulder here. This does resemble an inverse head and shoulders, but it is leading to a potential rising wedge, which is not the best of signs, right? But then at the same time, we also have this head and shoulders like formation that's forming, which could actually cause a bit of a drop, right? The relative weakness that Tesla has is not the best of signs. So, like I said, there's so many hypotheticals. It's very hard to predict right now because there's so much crazy stuff going on, from earnings to the bad news that Tesla just had. What I want to note is, what are the levels? And then I'm going to just attempt to give you guys my prediction, but please take it with a grain of salt because the news affects this stock. I can't always predict the news. But I want to note the resistance right now is between this 125-ish zone right here. Then we have support around this 115-ish zone. It's not like a perfect area. It tends to be like, it tends to fluctuate between this zone where the true bounce area is. We bounced off like 116 at one point, another point it was 115. So between these two zones, I think Tesla's going to be stuck here, but we will likely make a big move if we break one of these. So if we do break above like 126, this thing could actually go flying to 128, then 130, right? But if we break below, because of some bad news, hypothetically, 115, if we break that, man, we could come all the way down to this 113 level, maybe even lower than that. So that's why it's so important to watch these levels on Tesla. You could quite clearly see how it's been respecting support and resistance. So what am I predicting? All right, I'm going to just try to give you guys my best educated guess. I can't predict it perfectly because of, the news that's coming out. I will say something like this. I believe Tesla's going to fill the gap here. I think that's going to happen. And I don't know if the market is going to get a big rejection because SPY is getting very close to like 400. We might see the market slow down a little bit. I'm also worried about the VIX. That thing could bounce at any given moment. Seeing how much it drops in such a short period of time, it's almost oversold. I don't want to really use that word for it, but it's almost oversold in a way. So Tesla, in my opinion, it might start to come down and retest this trend line. If it breaks it, I would anticipate it to quickly come all the way back down to this area. I don't know if it's going to break it or not. I like to be optimistic because the NASDAQ and the QQQ look like they're going to try to hold up. But then again, Tesla has been relatively weak. So I think it's going to stay in this channel, and we're just going to see some boring price action just back and forth like this. And hopefully we can see a slight flat day. Could actually come down a little bit. But what I was thinking was, and this was my prediction initially, that the stock market is going to hold up and might even push up a little bit more. It does not look like the sequence is over yet. We still have some momentum. And I believe this might help Tesla push up for just the next few days before we do start to slow down. That's just what I believe is likely to happen. But we have to watch the levels just to be safe and sure. For Tesla, I believe this thing is going to try to hold this level just a little bit, close very flat. But then later on, when we have the news about the debt ceiling, the debt ceiling limit is actually coming, which means the United States Congress is about to be entering a battle about raising the debt ceiling and things like that. Not good for the financial systems in this country, which could actually negatively affect the credit markets, which could lead to the US Treasury yield, 10-year Treasury yield going up. If that happens, it could be very negative for the stock market. In the past, that has happened, leading to a bit of a drop. So later this week, I'm predicting that the market might slow down a bit going into like Thursday or Friday. But before that, I think the market's going to try to hold, and I think Tesla's going to try to hold these levels. I don't know if we're going to try to break like 125 because we did get some bad news about Elon Musk. And also, Tesla has been pretty weak. It's just been stuck in this channel so far. There's no indication of it breaking. It becomes much easier to predict once we get a big move. But for the time being, I'm anticipating it to push up a little bit, fill this gap, maybe come down a little bit, and have a very flat day. And if the market does pump a bit, it might try to pump a little bit, but I'm just not as confident about that just yet because the VIX is in such a very, very tight place. With that said, I'm anticipating a pretty flat day for Tesla. I do think we might close very close to being either green or red. Hopefully, we're a little green. It could be a little bit of a green close in the 1, 2, 3s. I'm really hoping for that. But other than that, I don't see much else going on with the stock. It's been pretty boring, just going back and forth, pretty choppy price action for now. But I'm hoping this thing could actually see a nice move. I also want to note that earnings is just 9 days away. And if we are in this like rising wedge like pattern, if this still holds and just like it's a big bounce and continues to push, maybe that's awesome. Maybe it wants to push up. But if we are pushing this hard, approaching earnings, that is not always the best of signs if this thing's making such a big move, especially in this bearish pattern, which is it's not going to be the best of signs, okay? And we could see an opposite reaction after earnings. So I would be very careful of trading this thing. There is a possible inverse head and shoulders playing out if this thing wants to continue pushing. It is possible if we do get that breakout. So make sure you watch this 125 zone and also watch this 115 zone. These are the two zones Tesla has been stuck in for the past week. It could break either way. It is very possible it might break to the upside though. It could still happen. I'm just very cautious because of the VIX, but that's essentially what I'm seeing. Maybe we get a flat, maybe somewhat green day tomorrow. I'm just going to be very cautious. Anyways, thank you all for listening. Please remain calm, cool, and collected. Please enjoy your Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I know I forgot to mention that in the beginning. It's a very important day to remember our history, because our history is not only our past, it's also our future. We must learn from our mistakes in the past, and we must appreciate the advantages we have right now, no matter how hard it is to see them. Thank you for listening. I want the best for everyone. Keep your heads up, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon, because the long term future is still incredibly bright. And peace out.